The rain was falling in relentless sheets against our penthouse windows, each drop sounding like a tiny hammer of fate against the glass. I sat at our marble kitchen island, the cold stone seeping through my silk pajamas, my husband's second phone burning in my hand like a piece of stolen evidence. It had fallen from his coat pocket when he rushed out for another emergency business meeting 30 minutes ago, and now it felt like I was holding a live grenade that could detonate my entire world. For 5 years of marriage, I'd believed Mark was just intensely private about his work, the separate phone, the late-night calls from his office, the business trips that always seemed to fall on important dates. I'd been the understanding wife, the supportive partner, the woman who trusted her husband completely. But tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way he'd avoided my eyes when he kissed me goodbye. Maybe it was the unfamiliar floral scent that clung to his clothes lately, a sweet, feminine perfume that wasn't mine. Or maybe it was the gut-wrenching intuition that had been growing for months, a silent scream in my soul that something was terribly, horribly wrong. The phone buzzed in my hand, lighting up with a notification that would unravel the fabric of my reality. Reminder, Sophia S. ballet recital for p.m. tomorrow. My blood turned to ice. Sophia, we didn't know any Sophia. We didn't have children. We'd been trying for 3 years through fertility treatments that left me emotionally ravaged, through miscarriages that shattered my heart while Mark offered distant comfort, through nights where I cried myself to sleep while he worked late. With trembling fingers, I tried every passcode I could think of: his birthday, our anniversary, the date we met. Nothing worked. Then I remembered last week when I'd pretended to be asleep and heard him whispering numbers into his office phone. 7, 23, 15, 42, he'd murmured in that low, intimate tone he used to reserve for me. I thought it was stock prices or business codes. Now, I entered 72315 for 2, the phone unlocked, and my world ended. The home screen showed a photo of Mark, beaming with paternal pride, holding a little girl with dark curls and his exact smile. She looked about 4 years old, dressed in a pink ballet tutu, her small hand resting trustingly on his shoulder. Standing beside them was a beautiful woman with fiery red hair, her hand resting possessively on Mark's arm, her smile radiant with the comfortable familiarity of years together. They looked like the perfect family. They looked happy. They looked like everything I'd ever wanted and thought I was building with him. My hands shook so violently I had to set the phone down on the cold marble. I opened the Messages app, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Dozens of conversations with Elena, the red-haired woman from the photo. Conversations spanning years, dating back to before our wedding. Conversations about their daughter Sophia's first steps, her first words, her first day of preschool. About mortgage payments on a house I'd never seen. About grocery lists and weekend plans, and arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Ordinary domestic conversations that revealed an entire life parallel to mine. Then I found the emails, the legal documents. The prenuptial agreement. I'd never seen one that gave me nothing if our marriage ended. Nothing but the clothes on my back and the shame of being the wife who didn't know she was the other woman. The document was dated 2 weeks before our wedding, signed by Mark, and witnessed by David Chen, his business partner, the man who had stood as his best man at our wedding, the man I'd considered a friend. But the worst was yet to come. I opened the photo gallery and found hundreds of images documenting a life I knew nothing about. Mark and Elena's wedding, a beautiful beach ceremony that happened 3 years before our own. Sophia's birth photos of Mark cutting the umbilical cord, tears of joy in his eyes. Family vacations, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, all the moments I'd begged for, all the memories we tried to create, already lived and documented with another family. I scrolled further back, my horror growing with each image. There were photos of me, candid shots taken without my knowledge. Me leaving my therapist's office after our last miscarriage. Me having coffee with my best friend, deep in conversation about my fertility struggles. Me sleeping, vulnerable and unaware, he'd been watching me. Documenting my movements, building a case. The final blow came when I found the financial documents. Bank accounts I knew nothing about, properties in other states. investment portfolios worth millions, a life insurance policy on me with him as the sole beneficiary for $5 million, and a timeline, a carefully constructed plan to end our marriage while ensuring I received nothing. According to the documents, he was planning to file for divorce next month, citing emotional instability and unreasonable behavior on my part. He had doctor's reports forged, I realized, detailing my mental decline since our last miscarriage. He had photos of me taking prescription medication, my fertility drugs, twisted into evidence of instability. He had witness statements from people I considered friends, all prepared to testify against me. The room spun. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, my body rejecting the truth my mind couldn't process. 5 years of marriage built on lies. 5 years of thinking I was building a life with someone when all along I was just a pawn in his game. I thought about all the signs I'd missed. The business trips that always fell on holidays. The way he never combined our finances, the separate phone, the secretive behavior I'd excused as stress. The way he'd isolated me from my family, telling me they were toxic. I looked at my reflection, pale, trembling, tears streaming down my face. The woman staring back was a stranger, but as I stood there, something shifted inside me. The heartbreak hardened into something cold. Something determined. He thought he could destroy me. He thought I was weak, broken, defeated. He was wrong. I washed my face, the cold water shocking me back to reality. I returned to the kitchen and began documenting everything. I photographed every message, every email, every document. I created backups. I made a plan. I would play the oblivious wife. I would smile and laugh and pretend, and when he least expected it, I would strike. The key turned in the door. Mark was home. I quickly locked his phone and placed it exactly where I'd found it. I forced a smile onto my face. "Hey, honey," I called out, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "How was your meeting?" Mark stepped into the kitchen, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his tie loosened in that carefully casual way he had. "Long night," he sighed, dropping his briefcase by the door. "The Henderson account is bleeding us dry with their constant revisions." I watched him move through our kitchen with its professional-grade appliances. We never used its marble countertops that stayed pristine because we never cooked together, its expensive art that meant nothing because the life it was supposed to represent was a lie. Every gesture, every word, every familiar movement now seemed like part of an elaborate performance. "Rough day?" I asked, pouring him a glass of the scotch he liked, my hand steady despite the earthquake inside me. He took the glass, his fingers brushing mine. Once, that touch would have sent shivers through me. Now it made my skin crawl. "You have no idea," he said, taking a long swallow. "Sometimes I wonder why I bother with these clients." "Because you're supporting to families," I thought. "Because you need the money to maintain your double life. Because you're a liar and a cheat and I'm going to destroy you." Instead, I said, "You work too hard. Maybe we should take a vacation." Just the two of us. His eyes flickered with something, panic, annoyance. So quickly I might have missed it if I wasn't watching him like a hawk now. "Maybe after the quarterly reports," he said smoothly. "There's just too much going on right now, too much going on. Like your daughter's ballet recital tomorrow. Like your anniversary with Aelina next week. Like the life insurance policy you took out on me." I forced a concerned expression. "You look tired. Why don't you take a shower? I'll make us some dinner." He smiled, that charming, boyish smile that had once made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world. "You're too good to me, Sophia." Sophia? The name felt like a slap. He'd chosen it for me early in our relationship. Saying my given name, Elizabeth, was too formal. Now, I wonder if he'd chosen it because it was easier to keep his stories straight if his wives had different names. While he showered, I moved through our apartment like a ghost, seeing everything with new eyes. The separate bedrooms we'd explained away as sleeping better apart, the lack of family photos. The way he never left his phone unattended. The business trips that always seemed to fall on important dates, my birthday, our anniversary, the holidays. I thought about the miscarriages, the way he'd been distant through them all, telling me to be strong, that we could try again. Had he been relieved? Had he been counting on my emotional instability from the grief? In his office, I found more evidence. A safe behind a painting I'd always thought was securely bolted to the wall. A key kept beneath his desk drawer. Inside the safe, more documents. Property deeds for a house in Malibu, bank statements for accounts in the Cayman Islands. And photos, so many photos of his other life. There was one that made me stop breathing. Mark, Elena, and Sophia at what looked like a family reunion. Standing with them were my in-laws, the same people who had welcomed me into their family, who had comforted me after my miscarriages, who had sat at our dinner table and smiled at me well knowing their son had another wife, another daughter, another life. They all knew, everyone knew but me. I heard the shower turn off. I quickly replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, my movements silent and efficient. By the time Mark emerged in his robe, I was in the kitchen, stirring pasta sauce like the perfect little wife. "That smells amazing," he said, coming up behind me and wrapping his arms around my waist. I forced myself not to stiffen, not to pull away. "It's your favorite," I said lightly, puttanesque. He kissed my neck. "I don't deserve you." "No, I thought you don't." Over dinner, I watched him, really watched him, for the first time. The way he checked his phone under the table. The way his eyes darted around the room when he thought I wasn't looking. The tension in his shoulders that never quite went away, even when he was supposedly relaxing. I was thinking, I said casually, maybe we should update our wills. "You know, with everything that's happened, .. He looked up sharply. "Our wills, why?" I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Just thinking about the future. Making sure we're both protected." His smile was tight. "We're young, Sophia. There's plenty of time for that, not for me," I thought. "According to your timeline, I've got about a month before you destroy me." After dinner, he retreated to his office, claiming he had work to finish. I cleaned up, then pretended to watch TV while actually planning my next moves. I needed help. I needed evidence that would hold up in court. And I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. The next morning, after Mark left for work or wherever he actually went, I put phase 2 of my plan into action. I called the only person I thought I could still trust, my cousin Rachel, a lawyer who had never liked Mark. "Lizzie?" she said when she answered, using my real name. "This is a surprise. I need your help," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. "It's about Mark." There was a pause. "What's he done?" So I told her everything, the second phone. The other family, the forged medical records, the life insurance policy, the plan to leave me with nothing. When I finished, she was silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't do anything until I get there." While I waited, I did something I should have done years ago. I started digging into Mark's business. His company, Titan Ventures, was supposedly a successful investment firm. But as I looked through the documents I'd copied from his phone, I found discrepancies. Unexplained transfers, shell companies, money moving in ways that didn't make sense for a legitimate business. Rachel arrived. Exactly 19 minutes later, her face grim. She listened as I showed her the evidence, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "This is ... extensive," she said finally. "And dangerous if he's willing to go this far ... He's planning to destroy me," I said quietly. "He's been building a case against me for years." She nodded, her lawyer brain already working. "We need to be careful. We need irrefutable evidence. And we need to understand his endgame." Over the next week, we worked in secret. Rachel helped me install hidden cameras in the apartment. We hired a private investigator to follow Mark. We dug into his finances, his business, his other life. What we found was worse than I could have imagined. Mark wasn't just a bigamist. He was embezzling from his own company. Millions of dollars funneled through shell companies to accounts in the Cayman Islands, then moved to accounts under Elena's name. He was setting up his escape life with his real family, funded by stolen money, while I took the fall for everything. The private investigator's photos showed a life so normal it hurt. Mark pushing Sophia on a swing at the park, Mark and Elena grocery shopping, Mark attending parent-teacher conferences, all while telling me he was working, traveling, building our future. The most damning evidence came when we discovered Mark was planning to frame me for the embezzlement. He'd created paper trails linking the stolen money to accounts in my name. He had witnesses prepared to testify that I'd pressured him into the illegal transfers. He had documents showing I'd threatened to reveal his infidelity if he did and give me the money. He wasn't just planning to leave me with nothing, he was planning to send me to prison. The day before he was supposed to file for divorce, I put the final piece of my plan into action. I reached out to David Chen, Mark's business partner, the man who had witnessed the prenup, the man who had stood as his best man, the man who was also being betrayed. It took 3 days to get him to meet me secretly. When he finally agreed, he was skeptical, defensive. Whatever this is about, Sophia, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding, he said when we met in a quiet coffee shop far from both our neighborhoods. I slid a folder across the table. Look at this. Then tell me it's a misunderstanding. He opened the folder, his expression shifting from skepticism to confusion to horror as he flipped through the pages. The embezzlement records, the shell companies, the transfers to Elena's accounts, the documents framing me for everything. He's stealing from the company, David whispered, his face pale. He's stealing from us, and he's planning to blame me, I said quietly. But that's not all, I showed him the rest. The second family, the life insurance policy, the forged medical records. When I finished, David looked like he was going to be sick. I knew he was ambitious, but this he's destroying everyone who trusts him, I said. Including you, we made a deal that day. David would help me gather evidence from the business side. In return, I would help him protect the company and make sure Mark didn't take everything with him when he fell. The next week was a whirlwind of secret meetings, encrypted messages, and carefully gathered evidence. We documented everything, we made copies, we built a case so airtight there would be no escape. The day we planned to confront Mark, I dressed carefully, a sharp, professional suit, hair and makeup perfect. I looked like the woman I'd been before I met him, confident, capable, strong. I met David at his office. Our lawyers were there. The evidence was organized and ready. Are you sure about this? David asked me one last time. I looked at the file in my hands, at the life it contained, the lies, the betrayal, the carefully constructed destruction. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We walked into Mark's office together. He was at his desk, talking on the phone, smiling. When he saw us, his smile faltered. I have to call you back, he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving us. What's this about? I placed the file on his desk. It's about Sophia's ballet recital, I said calmly. And Elena, and the $5 million you're stealing from your own company. And the life insurance policy you took out on me. And the plan to have me declared mentally unstable and sent to prison. His face went through a rapid series of emotions: shock, fear, anger, and finally, a cold, calculating calm. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? I opened the file and began laying out the evidence, piece by piece. The photos, the documents, the financial records. The timeline of his plan to destroy me. With each revelation, his mask cracked a little more. By the time I finished, he was pale, sweating, his hands gripping the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles were white. You've been spying on me, he whispered. You left your second phone at home, I said calmly. You should be more careful. He looked from me to David, to the lawyers standing silently by the door. What do you want? I want you to sign this, I said, sliding another document across the desk. It's a confession and an agreement. You'll admit to the embezzlement. You'll return every penny you've stolen. You'll grant me a divorce with terms favorable to me. And you'll walk away from the company. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I said, my voice cold and steady, I'll take all of this to the police. And to the media, and to Elena. For the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. Elena doesn't know anything about this, doesn't she? I asked. Are you sure? Because according to the documents I have, she's the beneficiary of all those offshore accounts. She's on the deeds to all those properties. She knows exactly where the money is coming from. He stared at me, his breathing ragged. You'll destroy my family. I leaned forward, my hands flat on his desk, my eyes locked with his. You should have thought of that before you decided to build your family on the ruins of mine. The silence in the room was absolute. I could see him calculating, weighing his options, looking for a way out, and finding none. Sign the papers, Mark, David said quietly. It's the best deal you're going to get. He looked at the documents, at the evidence of his crimes spread across his expensive desk. Then he looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd married or the man I'd thought I'd married. The man who had promised to love and protect me. That man was gone, if he'd ever existed at all. He picked up the pen, his hand shook as he signed each page, his signature growing progressively sloppier as he went. When he was done, he dropped the pen like it had burned him. Get out, he whispered. I gathered the signed documents, my movements calm and deliberate. Gladly, as I turned to leave, he spoke again, his voice barely audible. Did you ever love me? I stopped, but didn't turn around. I loved the man I thought you were, I said. But he never existed. Then I walked out, leaving him sitting in the ruins of the life he'd built on lies. The door clicked shut behind me, a final, definitive sound. It was over.